Let's explore more autistic history. This is part 83 of a series. So currently we are on October 24th, 1997. Science magazine published an article titled, "Whose DNA Is It Anyways?" And it was written by Elliot Marshall. Now, I shared the first part of this in the video previous to this, and I'm going to pick up right where I left off. And let's see, we left off with a quote from John Shaystack, co-founder of Cure Autism Now, or CAN. Says here, a lot of people don't like it, Shaystack observes, including researchers who have devoted years to the field. That's too bad, he said, but it would be irresponsible for us to do anything else but share data. He says that kind of claim, along with counter-arguments from medical researchers, will be reverberating through the medical genetics community in the next few months as institutes at the National Institutes of Health, or NIH, try to do on a larger scale what CAN is doing for autism, as investigators turn from the relatively straightforward task of finding single genes that cause rare disorders to the bigger challenge of finding genes that might interact to cause common diseases such as autism. Many are running into the same problem. They need access to high-quality clinical data and DNA from huge numbers of affected families. But clinical researchers who spend years painstakingly diagnosing patterns of illness in families and collecting blood samples are wary of handing these materials over to molecular biologists, gunslingers with big labs, who might cream off the results and the glory. They say they deserve a chance to work with the data, and they worry that the quality may suffer as investigators, faced with a deadline for releasing their data, rush to collect and analyze it. The tide seems to be turning against these arguments. Like CAN and the Diabetes Support Group, some NIH Institute directors don't want to wait for investigators to offer up their data, and are drafting policies to make it easier for geneticists to get their hands on materials collected at NIH's expense. There's been a lot of gritting of teeth over this, says geneticist Aravinda, Aravinda Chakravarty, Chakravarty of Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. But I think we have to start with the principle that competition is good. We should make these collections as widely available as possible. Opening the databanks. These tensions are coming to a head this fall at the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, NHLBI. As Science went to press, NHLBI Chief Claude L'Enfant was planning to meet with his advisory council on 23rd October to consider a set of recommendations to open up the Institute's extensive collections of clinical data. L'Enfant notes that NHLBI has an enormous resources, close to 1.5 million blood samples, including 50 years of clinical data collected from subjects in a heart study based in Framingham, Massachusetts. The samples, which are under the control of the individual investigators and their universities, in some cases could be extended to cover 3 generations. All right, L'Enfant worries that these blood samples could remain on the shelf forever unless we address the issue of collaboration in a very positive way. L'Enfant and his advisory panel will be taking their cues from a report put together by a special emphasis panel on genetics co-chaired by Eric Lander, director of the Whitehead Institute, MIT Center for Genome Research in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and Roger Williams, director of the University of Utah Cardiovascular Genetics Research Unit in Salt Lake City. The panel says investigators have regarded DNA they've collected as a precious, finite resource and do not readily share it. To solve this problem, it urges NHLBI to establish a central service for immortalizing DNA in cell lines and maintaining the cells in a repository. Overseers would select material for the repository, ensure privacy, and pass on requests for access. NHLBI-funded investigators would be expected to make their materials generally available through this system. This panel also suggests that NHLBI put money into small grants covering the cost of shipping materials, particularly to anyone interested in testing out a new hypothesis. Moreover, to make sure that NHLBI's resources are widely publicized, the panel says the Institute should create a worldwide website to provide detailed information about clinical data collected by grantees, listing all studies of more than 150 people. Oh, the debate about DNA and who gets to see it started a long time ago. Goodness. Alright, it says NHLBI will probably endorse all these recommendations, says L'Enfant, but it is likely to provoke a big debate when it tackles one key question. How long should an investigator be allowed to retain exclusive control of data he or she has collected before turning it over to the central repository? The panel doesn't suggest a deadline. It merely proposes that new grants be offered as an incentive to encourage more rapid release of data from completed projects. I would say about a year is reasonable, says L'Enfant. It says the issue has prompted a review at the National Institute of Mental Health, NIMH, as well. On 19 September, NIMH Director Stephen Hyman's Advisory Council adopted most of a special report recommending changes to clear the way for a new genetics initiative. The report, written by 8-member panel chaired by Samuel Barondes, a University of California, San Francisco psychiatrist, and including Chakravarti and the ever-present Lander, recommended some organizational changes that we have already implemented, says Hyman. But the council couldn't agree on the panel's recommendation that all genetic materials gathered at NIMH expense should be shared after a 12 to 18 month proprietary period. All right, we had a very vigorous debate on this at the council meeting, says Hyman. Members focused on the question of how do you trade off the need to provide an incentive to investigators by rewarding them with exclusive use of materials versus the need to share DNA samples. Although the council reached no conclusion, Hyman said NIMH will set a policy soon. He claims that you won't meet a serious geneticist who doesn't agree that we need to share. But Hyman also recognizes that the questions of what to share and from what point to measure the 18-month time limit are not, I don't know how to say that word, so these are not small issues, basically, for investigators. Alright, I'm going to pick back up in the next video with the same story. It's kind of lengthy, but it'll be under the subhead, Problems in Compulsory Sharing. Alright, thank you for learning a little bit more autistic history with me.